Moving into a dark nightmare, 5 haunting true stories that will haunt you forever. The air was thick with fear, palpable and electric, as whispers of restless spirits echoed down the narrow, cobblestone streets. On one such street, a creaky old house stood, veiled in shadows and mystery. Locals warned that it was a place where dreams twisted into nightmares and the chilling cry of a lost child filled the night. Some said it was cursed, an embodiment of all malevolence in the world. No one dared to approach after sunset, but legend had it that if you listened closely, you could hear the faintest wail creeping through the cracks of its crumbling facade. Would you be brave enough to discover the truth lurking within? And then there was that family, the Johnsons, who Dee said they felt an icy grip on their shoulders at dinner one night, even as they laughed and shared stories. Their youngest son, little Timmy, claimed to see shadowy figures dancing outside his window, their eyes glowing like molten coals. He'd stay up late, frozen in fear, while the other kids slept soundly, ignoring his warnings. His parents brushed it off as childish imagination until they too began to feel the weight of invisible eyes watching them from the corners of their home. But it didn't stop there. Just blocks away, the abandoned cemetery held its own dark secrets. Several townsfolk had reported seeing the headstones shimmering under the moonlight, revealing names etched in sorrow, names that were hauntingly familiar. Gossip rippled through the town. Were they visiting the dead, or were the dead rising? The sound of rustling leaves turned to a low hum, hinting at a gathering of souls restless in their sleep. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Then, the tale of the old mill crept in, a crumbling structure that seemed to breathe and pulse with every gust of wind. They said a fire long ago had taken its toll, but now, some claimed to see flames flickering against the walls at night, dancing spectral figures mingling with the smoke. What had once been a bustling hub of happiness was now a haunting reminder of tragedies long buried. Each creak of wood now resembled the calling of a lost soul, begging the curious to step forth, and finally, deep within the forest, whispers of an ancient witch emerged, tales of eerie incantations hanging in the fog like cobwebs. People claimed to see her striding through the trees at twilight, her piercing gaze locking onto theirs with an unexplainable dread. Those who ventured too close vanished, their screams swallowed by the emerald depths, leaving only silenced echoes. But what truly bound these stories together? What unseen force connected the cries of Timmy, the shimmer of the headstones, the flickering flames, and the shadows in the trees? Something loomed just beyond the grasp of understanding, a dark force that seemed to breathe life into the very heart of their fears. As midnight approached, the ground began to tremble, hinting at something awakening from its slumber, ready to unleash its terror upon the unsuspecting town. In the stillness of the night, a strange vibration rippled through the ground. It was subtle at first, a whisper beneath the feet of the unsuspecting townsfolk, but then it grew, a sinister pulse that matched the racing beats of many hearts. Timmy crept from his bed, drawn to the window by a force he could barely understand. The moon hung like a sentinel in the sky, illuminating the creepy shadows that danced on the walls of his room. He pressed his small hands against the glass, eyes wide and trembling, peering into the abyss outside. What he saw made his chest tighten. The old house, draped in darkness, seemed to sway, whispering secrets to the wind. But it was the figures he saw, dark silhouettes moving closer to their home, that gripped him the most. They glided through the yard, their eyes mere pinpricks of light devouring the shadows around them. Timmy felt the icy fingers of fear wrap around his throat, nearly choking him. "Mom, Dad!" He called out, but his voice was swallowed by the growing hum that filled the air. Across the street, the Johnsons were restless. Sarah Johnson sat in her living room, clutching her coffee mug like a talisman against the dark. "Did you hear that?" she asked her husband, Michael, who hovered near the window. He nodded gravely, his face pale. It was as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the seams. The thought of the child's cries echoed in their minds, vivid reminders of the stories that surrounded them. Then, a sharp knock reverberated through their home, 3 steady thuds that echoed like a heartbeat. Startled, the couple exchanged looks, uncertainty hanging thick in the air. They held their breath, straining to listen, but the world had grown eerily silent. It felt heavy, like a blanket smothering everything beneath it. When the knock came again, louder this time, it shattered the tension like glass. Michael stepped to the door, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to turn back. With shaky hands, he grasped the doorknob, its cold metal sending a shiver down his spine. As he swung the door open, the air almost crackled with anticipation. No one was there. The porch was empty save for the shadows flickering in the dim light. Nothing, just the wind, he muttered, but unease gnawed at them both. At the abandoned cemetery, the night watchman felt a prickling at the nape of his neck. He turned, eyes scanning the eerie landscape. The headstones twinkled as if in approval of something sinister stirring beneath the surface. An unfamiliar fog rolled in, enveloping the tombstones, rising like a shroud. Shadows danced along the edges, and whispers floated through the cold night air. The watchman clutched his flashlight, its beam cutting through the fog like a knife. Each flicker of light revealed more shapes, hunched and twisted, moving among the graves. The whispering grew louder, forming a chorus of sorrowful wails, mourning unheeded lives. The watchman froze, realizing he was no longer alone. And in the deep woods, the ancient witch sensed a change, something awakening that had long been dormant. The trees rustled in a nervous tremor, leaves quaking in anticipation. Her eyes narrowed, adjusting to the shadows. She could feel their approaching dread. It was a familiar taste, an old friend returning after many years. The air felt charged with energy, foreboding, as she whispered incantations to the winds. With each passing second, the town held its breath, trapped in a web of destiny woven from fear and foreboding. As the clock struck midnight, the earth trembled, a harbinger of the chaos to come. Were they ready for what would emerge from the shadows, what had been awakened by their fears and whispers? A battle was brewing, one that would question the worth of their souls. What choice would they make when faced with the truth lurking just beyond the veil? Timmy stumbled back from the window, his heart thudding loudly in his chest. The shadows he'd seen weren't just figments of imagination, they were real, and they were closer than he'd ever imagined. He turned from the window, seeking the safety of his room, but the dreadful hum was growing stronger, vibrating through the walls and resonating within him. "Mom! Dad!" He called again, panic tightening his throat. No answer. Just silence that seemed to echo his fear. He crept toward the door, cautious of what lay beyond. With each step, a cold sweat dripped down his back, the dim light from his lamp flickering ominously, as if it too was caught in the throes of terror. Meanwhile, the Johnsons were now on high alert. Sarah felt a storm brewing within her as she gripped Michael's arm. "We can't ignore this. Something's wrong," she said, voice trembling yet insistent. There was a primal instinct rising in her, yelling at her to do something. Michael nodded, glancing around their home as if it might offer some sanctuary. "Let's check on Timmy," he suggested, though dread clawed at his insides. They moved cautiously, opening the door to the hall just as another violent knock rattled their front door again. This time, it felt like a grim message from the void. "Stay here," he whispered, taking a step toward the door. Their hearts pounded in sync. Another knock struck, more forceful. "Michael, please." Sarah's plea was cut off when instinct kicked in, and Michael pulled open the door. An unbearable weight crashed upon them. No one stood on the porch, just an unnatural stillness. The moon cast an eerie glow, illuminating the unnerving outlines of trees. But as he squinted into the night, he noticed the shadows hadn't all retreated. A ripple of movement. Something was watching them. "Did you see that?" He managed to breathe. Sarah nodded, her eyes widening as they darted between the dark treetops that swayed eerily. "We should get Timmy." she urged, pulling him back inside. Back at the cemetery, the watchman's skin crawled as the shadows merged into a foreboding mass on the edge of the graveyard. A sudden chill swept through the air, and he felt the urgency of a whisper that echoed louder than the rest. "Leave now." He swung the flashlight wildly, illuminating a tangle of gnarled shapes, their smiles wide and hungry gestures of the lost souls. Each flick of the beam was met with more figures emerging from the fog, their features clear now, emotionless. The watchman stumbled backward, all the bravado of his job dissipating. He turned to run but felt something cold wrap around his ankle. The witch watched from the tree lean, her fingers dancing in the air, stirring the dark energy that enveloped the town. She chuckled softly, the sound wrapping around the trees. "Awaken, my children," she coaxed, her voice a honeyed poison. "What has been buried shall rise, and fear shall rule the night." The ground quaked again, more violently now, shaking the foundations of their reality. The fog thickened, swallowing the town whole as it coalesced into a palpable entity. In Holmes, in the dark, fear nested. Timmy was still alone, heart racing as he sensed the tremors shaking his home. A shadow flickered at his door, not a vision this time, but a presence. It was already inside. "What are you?" he whispered, eyes darting around the dimness. Outside, the Johnsons clutched each other in the hallway when an otherworldly wail traveled through the air, gnashing at their sanity. They froze, understanding now that the nightmare was only beginning. As the hour grew later, the town's past clawed at its memory, demanding attention. Who would confront the terror closing in? What hid behind every shadow waiting for the light to falter? The clock chimed once more, deep and ominous. A surge of wind knocked their door open. A voice echoed in the chaos, low and menacing. "Your fears have summoned us and we are here to collect." With that, the town was plunged into utter darkness, and they all realized there was no turning back now. What lay in wait among the horrors? Would they face their fears or become the very shadows they dreaded? Timmy pressed his back against the cold wall, breath hitching as he strained to hear the sounds creeping through the shadows of his room. The lamp flickered erratically, casting ghostly shapes that danced on the walls. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. The hum had morphed into a low grumble, a distant thunder rumbling just below the surface of his consciousness. With trembling hands, he tightened his grip on the edge of his nightstand, the wood rough against his skin. "I have to get out of here," he whispered to himself, but as he took a hesitant step toward the door, it swung wide open, revealing an abyss filled with swirling blackness. His heart skidded to a halt. A figure stood there, obscured in the shadows yet undeniable in its presence, emanating a cold that bit straight through to his bones. "Come play with us." The voice slithered through the air, soft yet dripping with malice. Timmy's heart raced, reeling. He couldn't tell if he was more frightened of the figure or the force that beckoned him to approach. Across the hall, Michael and Sarah stood frozen, their eyes wide. The wail continued, reverberating through unsteady walls, clawing at the edges of their sanity. "We have to find Timmy," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper, panic shimmering in his gaze. But what if Sarah's voice faltered, a lump forming in her throat? What if they found him, but the shadows found them first? Before she could finish her thought, the door slammed shut behind them. Michael lunged for it, panic fueling his movements. With a hard shove, the door gave way, revealing Timmy's room, now swirling with shadows that seemed to stretch, grow, and breathe. "Timmy!" he called, vision blurred by fear. But instead of a response, a low, rumbling laughter erupted from the depths of the room, echoing off the walls like stones rolling in an avalanche. Eyes, bright and hungry, glimmered in the darkness, watching. Watching, wanting. "Michael, we have to go. Now." Sarah grabbed at his arm, an urgent tug, but Michael was paralyzed. The shadows twisted, forming shapes that tinged the air with dread. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet he felt anchored to the ground. "Can't you see them?" he finally gasped, eyes wide. Sarah squinted into the darkness. What? I don't see anything. Right there. He pointed, desperation pouring from him. And then, without any warning, a ghastly wail erupted once more, this time closer, sharper. It didn't come from the shadows, but from something much more disturbing, a mass of limbs and shadows converging, forming a grotesque figure. Timmy felt the pull of fear and fascination, inching toward the doorway that now felt more inviting than ever. Mom! Dad! He screamed, voice breaking as the shadows loomed over him, stretching out claw-like fingers, desperate to snatch him away. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating his room momentarily. Timmy gasped at what he saw. The shadows didn't just linger, they took form, revealing gnarled faces twisted in torment and glee. Timmy stumbled backward, mouth dry as the laughter surged to a deafening pitch. Did you think you could forget us? A voice hissed, resonating with rage. A bolt of instinct propelled Michael toward Timmy's room, but his foot slipped and landed on something soft and pulsing. He recoiled, a cold sensation creeping up his leg as he peered down, horrified. It was a small hand, smooth and lifeless. Get away! He shouted, recoiling as he felt the room fill with malice. But the shadows only crept closer, blocking any escape route. Clawing their way toward them, scraping walls on the journey, a cacophony of whispers filled the air, weaving a tapestry of fear as despair settled in. Timmy's wide eyes met Michael's frantic face. What do we do? He cried, voice trembling with the weight of the gathering shadows. A flash of insight hit Michael. Was this the moment they all feared? Would they allow the shadows to pull them into their dark embrace? Fight! He yelled, voice breaking through the chaos. The shadows hesitated, seemingly caught off guard at the surge of defiance. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. She wasn't just going to run anymore. A flicker of determination ignited in their hearts against the creeping darkness, but would it be enough? Just as the shadows lunged forward, they heard at the ground beneath them trembled violently. The walls shook, and suddenly the whispers grew to a roar, drowning out all thoughts of fear. Awaken, awaken! The echoes were unmistakable, making the air buzz with dread, but also hope. What would they awaken? And would it be their salvation or their doom? The ground shuddered beneath them, a pulsating heartbeat of the house, echoing the mounting chaos. Shadows writhed and twisted, their forms flickering, as if they lacked the energy to maintain solidity. Michael clenched his fists, fighting the urge to retreat. This was his brother. He couldn't give in. Timmy! He yelled, desperation flooding his voice. But the little boy stood entranced, seemingly caught in a trance from the shadows swirling around him. The gnarled faces seemed to inch closer, whispering his name, beckoning him into a dark embrace. Timmy, listen to me! Sarah shouted, her tone sharp, cutting through the swirling chaos. You are not alone. We're here. Timmy blinked, the glassy sheen in his eyes fading slowly, the shadows losing their grip, but just as they began to break away, another quake shook the walls, louder now, ferocious. Dust cascaded from the ceiling like rain, and an earth-shattering roar erupted from beneath the floorboards, drowning their cries. Awaken! It bellowed, a command that sent tremors of dread through the three of them. Back to where you belong. Michael cried out, stepping forward, fierce and resolute. A strange wave coursed through him, fueled by a blend of sheer courage and love. You can't take him. The shadows screeched, a cacophonous blend of shrill voices rising in rage. They recoiled, momentarily stunned, giving Michael the opening he needed. He reached for Timmy, grabbing his hand, pulling him back with a force born of panic-laden determination. Let us go. Now! He barked. Yet as he backed away, the shadows recoiled and morphed into a writhing mass of terror, cutting off their escape. The door slammed shut with a shattering thud that reverberated in their very bones. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. What do we do? Where do we go? Across the room, grotesque faces uncoiled, dancing and swirling like smoke intertwined in a wicked dream. They laughed a laugh that scraped against sanity, echoing memories of lost children, moments of joy twisted into nightmares. Just then, something within Timmy flickered. A small spark of resistance ignited an inner strength he didn't know he possessed. "You're not my friends," he shouted, shaking his head vehemently. "You're just monsters. Foolish child." One of the figures hissed, its voice cracking like dry wood. "You belong with us. We won't let you take him." Michael screamed back, but uncertainty crept into his heart. How could they fight against such dark, ancient power? But as the shadows lunged forward again, this time, Timmy felt an overwhelming urge to fight back. "Stop! You can't have me!" A scream built inside, raw and primal, bubbling to the surface. Suddenly, all at once, a bright light flickered to life at Timmy's core. A warmth surged through him, radiating outward like the rays of the sun piercing through storm clouds. The shadows jerked back, their figures contorting, faces twisting in horror as the light expanded. "No!" they screeched in unison. In stunned silence, Michael and Sarah watched as their fear turned to hope, watching their brother glow. Timmy shone like a beacon. The figures faltered, their form dispersing like mist against a rising tide, but they weren't gone. They were evolving, swirling around one another, drawing together, forming something massive, something unexpected. As the last remnants of darkness roared in fury, a figure began to materialize within the haze, a giant, unearthly shape, crowned with eyes filled with anger and hunger, and the echo of a child's laughter twisted into something sinister. "Join us, sweet child," and just like that, the atmosphere tightened, dread wrapping around them like chains. Michael and Sarah's expressions darkened, fear clawing at their instincts. What is that?" Sarah's voice had dropped to a terrified whisper. What had they truly awakened? Doubt gripped Michael tightly. Knowing what they faced now could change everything. "If that's what I think it is," his voice trailed off, a chilling realization settling like frost in his veins. "We fight!" Timmy shouted, his small voice filled with fiery resolve. But could they truly fight against the very essence of terror itself? As the grotesque figure shifted closer, the shadows at its feet swirling with a new ominous intent, Michael's heart raced. Together, Michael locked eyes with Sarah, sealing their fate. She nodded, bravery kindling inside her stomach. But as they readied themselves for the dark battle ahead, the floor rumbled violently once more. Dive deeper into despair. Would they find light in the depths of shadow? Would they pull Timmy back from the edge of darkness, or would they all be consumed by it? The truth loomed ever closer. The moment had come. The shadow's grotesque form coiled tighter around them, its presence like a vice squeezing the air from the room. Panic clawed at Michael's insides. The creature loomed large, its many eyes glinting with a predatory glimmer, as if assessing its prey. "Timmy!" he shouted again, forcing himself to focus. "You're stronger than this. Remember the games we used to play?" He tried to draw Timmy's attention away from the abyss that threatened to swallow him whole. Timmy stood firm, a flicker of confusion crossing his young face. I don't know what to do," he yelled back, his voice trembling. "Listen to your heart, buddy. You're not alone. We're right here." Michael half pleaded, half commanded. The creature, now taking on a more humanoid shape, leaned in closer. "Join us, sweet child," it crooned, voice like ice dripping slowly. The temptation of sameness whispered through the air. "We'll play forever. No pain. No sorrow. You'll belong." "Stop!" Sarah cried, her protective instincts flaring. She stepped forward, taking Timmy's other hand. "We won't let you win." Her voice rang out like a bell, clear and unwavering. The shadows around them twitched violently, as if enraged by her defiance. "Foolish mere mortals!" the creature roared, its monstrous face shifting into a riot of emotions: gluttony, rage, and something darker, an ancient pain. "You know nothing of the darkness. He belongs to us. You cannot fight what you do not understand." As it spoke, a whisper of darkness clawed at Michael's resolve, revealing the depths of doubt nestled within him. What if they truly couldn't fight it? The weight of their circumstances crashed down around him, but the sight of Timmy's trembling face spurred him into action. Remember when we fought those monsters with flashlights outside? Michael shouted, a desperate grin pulling at the corners of his mouth. You told me the light would always win. With wide, fearful eyes, Timmy's gaze flickered between Michael and the creature. The light inside him flickered, hesitating, wavering. Yes, yes. The light. Timmy's resolve hardened, memories of laughter and summer nights flooding back. Beneath the surface, the golden glow began to pulse anew, drawing strength from his heart as the shadows withdrew slightly, hissing in frustration. As the darkness recoiled, the figure morphed, seeming to be torn between two realities, one where it consumed and one where it would fail. The air crackled with tension, the very fabric of the room vibrating from the conflict. The creature's voice dropped to a sinister whisper, its face twisting grotesquely. You cannot escape your fate, Timmy. Surrender, and you will be free. Not if I would rather fight. Timmy's voice rang out, burning with new courage. The light exploded around him, illuminating the room, sending shockwaves through the shadows. In the name of love. Sarah shouted, her hands moving as if weaving a shield around them. The warmth from Timmy pulsed outwards, pushing against the dark, but the creature simply transformed, slithering back, its form elongating, stretching like elastic. You think this means you won? It roared, a sound that felt like a hurricane roaring from the depths of hell. I will hunt you through every shadow, every corner, and every nightmare. Suddenly, the walls shook again. The atmosphere thickened, the shadows surged forward, concealing everything in blackness. Michael squeezed Timmy and Sarah's hands tight, steeling himself for the imminent chaos. Darkness enveloped them, each breath a struggle against an unseen force. Michael's heart hammered in his chest, louder than even the chaos surrounding them. We can do this. Together. He cried out desperately, though doubt seeped in like smoke, and then, the ground beneath them split open, an abyss revealing itself, each layer darker and more foreboding than the last. Timmy's light flickered, wavering against the monstrous figure and overwhelming dread. Michael. What's at the bottom? I don't know. He yelled through the swirling turmoil. But we have to hold on. We can't let go. As the darkness surged, pulling them toward the fissure, Michael and Sarah's grip tightened, their breathing ragged and desperate. Would they fall into the abyss? Would the shadows win? The primal scream from Timmy echoed, breaking through the chaos, rising above the darkness, threatening to swallow them all. Something deep within Michael ignited, a fierce resolve. We'll find a way, Timmy. Together we're stronger. But as they stood at the edge of the abyss, uncertainty clouded their minds. Would their combined strength be enough? Or would they all be lost in the dark? Everything teetered on the brink of calamity. And just as the shadows lunged forward, a glimmer of light burst forth. What came next would determine their fate forever. The moment the light exploded, it shattered the consuming darkness, rippling through the air like fireworks. Michael squinted, shielding his eyes. Timmy's glow was no longer just a flicker, it engulfed the room, pushing against the writhing shadows like a barrier. Keep it up, Timmy. Sarah yelled, her voice reverberating with hope. Don't let them pull you under. But the shadows lunged. They darted forward like a pack of wolves, snarling and snapping, desperate to snuff out the light. Michael felt their cold breath caress his skin. It made him shiver, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. Stay together. He shouted, tightening his grip on Timmy and Sarah's hands. He could feel their fear pulsing through their joined fingers, a tether that connected them, binding their fates. Abyss or hope, the creature taunted, its voice twisting through the air like a blade. You will choose. No. Timmy screamed, the brightness intensifying further, forcing the malevolence back. The creature's enormous form distorted under the weight of the light, its many eyes squinting against the brilliance. For a fleeting moment, Michael felt the warmth creeping back into the room. The shadows slithered away, hissing in pain, but it was only a pause. They could feel the creature's anger gathering strength, its grotesque body rippling like oil on water, ready to retaliate. "What do we do?" Timmy cried out, his voice cracking as the light dimmed slightly. "Think of all the love you felt," Sarah urged, her eyes locked onto Timmy's. "The family, the joy, the laughter, that's your power." "Think of the memories," Michael chimed in. "They need you to remember." Timmy's eyes widened, flooding with realization. He thought of every moment that filled his heart, his mother's embrace, the laughter shared with friends, the warmth of sunlight on his face during carefree days. "I remember," he shouted, and a blinding pulse of light cascaded around them, more brilliant than before, casting the creature into relief. Shadows recoiled in agony, revealing twisted faces marred by anguish and deceit. "It does not matter." The creature howled, its voice rising, threatening to drown out the warmth. "These are merely fleeting thoughts. You will find only despair. Your memories will not save you." But the light continued. It grew stronger, igniting the air with a golden hue. With it came moments of clarity. Timmy's laughter echoed, an antidote to the despair. Michael felt a rush of energy surge within him. They could break free. And then, silence. A stillness washed over them, freezing time in a moment of tranquility. The churning shadows paused, hesitant, as Timmy's light bathed the room. Michael's heart thundered in his chest. "Now!" he shouted, "use it all." Timmy's eyes lit up with purpose. "For love. For family." The cry erupted between them, merging with the light, and in that instant, it rolled forward like a tidal wave. The shadows screamed, the creature screeched in incomprehensible rage. The ground beneath them shuddered violently as the overwhelming force collided with the darkness, ripping through tendrils of despair. Explosive bursts of light shot through the air, and the creature staggered, struggling to maintain its form amidst the chaos. "No. You will not win." It shrieked, but its voice and confidence faltered. "Hold on!" Michael yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. They felt like they could touch the edge of victory, the hope shimmering just beyond the abyss, but just as the creature wavered, it unleashed a final, deafening roar. "I will return." "You think you've won? This is only the beginning." With that, the shadows writhed, spiraling back toward the abyss, merging into the darkness. The ground beneath them swirled, shaking like a dying beast, and they were teetering again on the edge of chaos. "Timmy, Sarah, now!" Michael cried, pulling them toward the light, away from the gross distortion that threatened to collapse upon them. They surged forward, propelled by the last remnants of light and hope. As they lunged, the darkness howled like a banshee behind them. Would they escape the abyss, or would they be consumed in the end? They jumped into the glow, into the unknown, but where would it lead? Would they emerge whole, or would they be forever changed? Bright light engulfed them, wrapping around like a warm blanket. Michael felt the world tilt, a dizzying plunge into a sea of illumination, as if he had been tossed into a canvas painted with unyielding optimism. Yet, doubt nagged at the edges of his mind. What if the shadows were waiting? What if escape was merely a cruel illusion? They landed with a heavy thud, the light fading just enough for Michael to blink back the brightness. As his eyes adjusted, the warmth dissipated, replaced by a chilling stillness that settled into his bones. Familiar shapes loomed around them, but it was not the comfort of home they fell into. It was a twisted version, familiar yet horrifying, as if they had stepped straight into a nightmare. "Where are we?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. Michael searched her face, hoping for a flicker of familiarity amid the dread creeping back. "I don't know," he replied, voice trembling. "But we need to move." The shadows clung to the elongated hallways, the walls pulsing with an ominous heartbeat. They could hear whispers, distorted remnants of conversations that had formed a chorus of despair. It felt alive, almost sentient, as if the very air grew heavy with unsettling promise. "Look!" Timmy pointed, his voice rising above the cacophony. A doorway flickered into view, surrounded by dim light that beckoned like a lighthouse to a ship in stormy waters. "Should we?" Sarah asked, her hesitation palpable. "We have to," Michael insisted, feeling a fierce desperate courage clawing at him. "It's our only chance." They moved toward the door, the whispers growing louder as if warning them to turn back. Crossing the threshold felt like wading through mud. The atmosphere changed, each step heavier than the last, as they entered a room steeped in shadows. It was a mirror of their own world, their school, their street, but everything was distorted. The familiar scent of home turned rancid, like burnt memories that clung to their lungs. "What is this place?" Timmy pressed his palm against a mirror, peering hard, hoping to catch a glimpse of the safety they lost. "Reflections," Michael breathed, realizing what lay before them. The faces of their friends and family stared back, not with warmth, but vacant eyes marred by sorrow and terror. Unspoken words trapped behind glass, moments frozen in a cycle of despair. "Why are they trapped?" Sarah's voice cracked, fear coating her words. "Because of us," he gasped, clarity washing over him like cold water. "We left without them. They are lost and it's our fault." Panic surged through him, manifesting as a knot in his throat. "No!" Timmy shouted, his voice breaking through the weight of guilt. "We can't let this be the end. We can still." A sickening shudder rippled through the room, silencing them. The shadows thickened, gnashing teeth whispering promises of despair. They felt their spirit falter under the weight of regret, it wrapped around them like chains. "Join us," the murky figures hissed, their forms twisting through the glass-like walls. "You cannot escape what you've done." Michael's heart raced. "Timmy, remember the light. We just need to fuel it with our love, our hope." Timmy's eyes blazed with determination. "For them. We won't leave them behind." But as they closed their eyes, drawing deep from the reservoir of their memories, a terrifying realization struck. What if it wasn't enough this time? What if the shadows were stronger than their love? With their hearts pounding, they joined hands again, but as the shadows surged forward, ready to claim them, the very fabric of the room began to warp and tear. "What's happening?" Sarah cried, panic ablaze in her tone as the world around them distorted like a funhouse mirror. "Hold on!" Michael shouted, fear gnawing at him. They couldn't yield, not now. Not after coming so far, and just as the darkness rushed in for their final embrace, Timmy screamed, "We remember. You don't own our hearts." The shadows recoiled, but would it be enough to break free? They felt themselves slipping, teetering on the brink of hope and despair, but as they fell, a voice echoed. Amidst the turmoil, one they could barely believe. "You think you can save them, but the truth lies within your deepest fear." What fear had they overlooked? And could it be their salvation, or would it be their doom? The world spun like a mad carousel, colors melting and swirling into a disorienting haze. The ground they once stood on shifted beneath them, pulled by unseen forces. As they plunged deeper into the abyss, Michael's mind raced, trying to grasp the meaning behind the voice. "What do you want from us?" he shouted into the darkness, desperation lacing his words. The shadows writhed and pulsed with malevolent glee, but the only response was a cacophony of mocking laughter that curled around them like smoke. Everything the voice hissed, chilling them to their very core. With a sudden jolt, they landed hard on a surface that felt too familiar yet terrifying. Underneath their feet, they realized they stood on the cracked pavement of their old playground, the swings swaying silently despite the absence of wind. It was a place that should have been full of laughter, but now it dripped with sorrow, leaving a bitter taste in the air. "Timmy, remember when we used to play tag here?" Sarah's voice barely rose above a whisper, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. A frantic nod from Timmy revealed he was battling his own memories. "But it's not the same. It feels wrong." "Because it is," Michael snapped, urgency spilling into his voice. "This place is twisted. It's trying to feed off our fear. Their hearts hammered as the ground began to splinter, drawn irresistibly toward the shadows clawing at the edges of their vision. Michael could feel the weight of regret pressing in on him, thick and suffocating. They needed to escape, but the further they advanced, the more the playground morphed into a grotesque parody of their past, each swing creaking with discontent, each slide warped and rusted with neglect. "Look!" Sarah cried, pointing toward a shadowy figure lingering at the edge of the slide. It resembled their old principal, but his eyes were void, black holes that seemed to consume the light around him. "Do you think he knows what happened?" Timmy asked, voice trembling as they edged closer. But deep down, they all felt the truth: they were being watched and judged by the remnants of their past. What if? Michael hesitated, fear swelling in his chest. What if this is a test? What if it's asking us to confront what we left behind? The shadows writhed in agreement, morphing into figures of their long-lost friends, faces twisted in agony. "You abandoned us," they chorused, voices layered in endless loops of grief. "You can never escape the choices you made." "No!" Michael shouted, shaking his head violently. "We were just kids. We didn't know." "But you do now," the voice replied, more a suggestion than a threat. Michael watched, breath caught in his throat, as the ground below him splintered, revealing dark chasms leading to unimaginable depths. "Together." Timmy's voice echoed with fervor. "We face it together, no matter how dark it gets." As they held hands, Michael felt a spark of warmth intertwining with their shared fear, a flicker of the light they clung to. But doubts clawed at him, reminding him of their previous failures, of how the shadows had cast them aside before. "Keep going," Sarah murmured, squeezing Michael's hand as if to push back the suffocating dread. "We can't give in." But before they could push any further, the echoes morphed. The figures shifted, revealing more than just familiar faces. They unveiled secrets buried beneath the weight of silence, betrayals and choices that haunted corners of their hearts, things better left unspoken. "Do you really think you can save them?" The shadows hissed, laughter echoing through their minds. "You don't even know your greatest fear." Then in a flicker, he saw it: the memories twisted by neglect, haunted by things long buried. The truth about their journey was beginning to reflect back, a terrifying reflection of themselves. With renewed strength, Michael shouted against the tide of despair. "It's true. We left. But I'm not afraid anymore." The shadows recoiled as light sparked from their joined hands, illuminating the playground. As they pressed forward into the light, the shadows lost their grip, but the flickering grasp of memories continued to chase them, unyielding. But the flickering light was faltering. The shadows began to gather with menacing intensity. In that moment, as Michael glanced behind, dread seeped into his veins. The truth unsettled him more than the darkness itself, a whisper that echoed through their minds: what if the greatest fear is the one you cannot remember? And just as they glimpsed something hiding at the edge of those memories, something dark and powerful, a creeping dread snapped through the air. There was no way out, no safety, only the shadows that lurked right behind, the terrifying reminder that they might never truly escape. "Run!" he shouted, but as they fled, Michael's heart raced faster than ever, knowing things were about to get much worse. The echoes of turmoil lingered in the air as Michael's heart pounded in his chest. They sprinted across the twisted playground, but no matter how fast they moved, dread chased them like a shadow refusing to be left behind. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice a fierce beacon of hope. "We can find a way out." "I don't know how much longer I can run." Timmy wheezed between gasps, the weight of despair hovering around him. As they turned towards the rising tower of shadow, it pulsated with a menacing life of its own, stretching fingers towards them like tendrils of darkness. Suddenly, a voice harsh and low erupted from the darkness: "You cannot escape your past. It will consume you whole." It swirled around them, a chilling echo vibrating in the very fabric of their being. Michael stumbled but quickly regained his footing. "That's not true. We can face it together." His voice resonated with conviction and determination, echoing back against the twisted memories they were forced to confront. We've faced the darkness before. But the shadows only grew darker, clinging to their limbs as the gravity of their past loomed over them. Familiar figures materialized, distorted reflections of friends and family whom they thought lost, their faces twisted in expressions of sorrow and betrayal. "Why did you leave us?" they moaned, voices harmonizing into a haunting melody despair that filled Michael's ears. They were reminders of the pain they had ignored, the choices they had left hanging. "You abandoned us to face this nightmare alone." "No," Timmy yelled, his small voice echoing with defiance. "We made mistakes, but we're here now." He stepped forward, light pouring from his heart like a sun rising in a stormy sky. "We're fighting for you." The figures stiffened, momentarily taken aback by Timmy's illumination. Each soft glow that resonated from him awakened the shimmering memories buried deep within the shadows, lighting the twisted playground once more. Michael felt hope blossom within himself. "There's power in our shared love. We can bring you back." He grasped Sarah's and Timmy's hands tighter, the warmth radiating from their connection providing strength in this abyss of despair. They had faced nightmares before, and to succumb to them now was not an option. As they stood united, the shadows shrieked, their forms writhing. "You think love can defeat us?" they spat, their voices cracking as they closed in. It felt like an insurmountable tide pulling at their defenses, but they stood together firm, refusing to yield. "Fight back!" Sarah shouted, channeling the love they felt for every painful loss into a singular explosive light. Banishing the shadows took a depth of courage they had yet to uncover. Timmy squeezed his eyes shut, connecting deeper with the memories of laughter, joy, and unyielding family bonds. "I remember our games. Our love. It's bigger than you." In that decisive moment, the light swelled, bursting forth from Timmy's chest like an explosion of stars unfurling into the night. It stretched toward every twisted shadow, every face turned sour with regret, and illuminated the playground once more. "No." The shadows screeched in unison as they were consumed by the light. "We belong together." "Not anymore." Michael bellowed, unleashing a burst of determination that fueled the light even further. "You will no longer haunt us. We are stronger than you." As the shadows dissolved into nothingness, a profound silence settled, filling the air with a tranquility they hadn't felt in so long. The pain of their past began to lift, weightless. The playground transformed back into the joyful space of their childhood, filled with laughter and sunlit memories. Breathless, Michael looked around, emotions crashing through him like waves. "Did we do it?" he whispered, eyes wide and hopeful. Sarah squeezed his hand and nodded. "I think we did." Timmy grinned, skin glowing with warmth and freedom. "We did it together. We faced our fears." His spirit soared high above, fueled by the love that conquered all darkness. Across the now peaceful playground, the twisted faces slowly faded, returning to their true forms of the loved ones they had lost. They smiled, radiating warmth and gratitude, as if the weight of generations lifted. As they stepped out from the playground of shadows, Michael turned to his family, realizing how precious this bond was. "We faced the darkness and won. Together, we'll always shine brighter." With that clarity settling deep within their hearts, they stepped into the world outside, the sun rising on the horizon, a new beginning dawning free from the shackles of fear. They had turned their darkness into light and, together, stepped boldly into the future. Now you have to make a move. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. We can't do this without your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think awaits the characters in their new journey? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep the energy alive.